I've been studying organizations now for about a decade, and I've been focused on how organizations, schools in particular, learn. But for a number of reasons that I want to point out today, I think the journey ahead is more about the unlearning that we need to do. On December 27th, 2013, I was at the kitchen table with my daughter Lila. She's 3 years old, and she had a worksheet in front of her. And on that worksheet, it had a set of shapes. It had a circle, a square, and a triangle, and then another circle, square, and a blank space. I looked at my little angel, and I said, "What do you think goes in that blank space?" She says, "Triangle, Daddy." You can imagine my joy. With crayon in hand, she proceeds to put the crayon on the table, puts her finger on the triangle, and attempts to drag it over into the blank space. Perspective's interesting. At times, it'll flip you upside down. It'll jolt your world like never before. But at times, it provides a level of clarity, a sense of awareness, and a level of consciousness that you just couldn't get in everyday life. That's why we have to be awake. You see, so many have called this the digital age, or the information age, or even a social age, or an age of networked intelligence. The truth is, to me, for you, for us, and for our children, this is an age of infinite possibility. But the question remains, in education, we have to start to ask tough questions. We have to start to wonder, what does it even mean to be a modern learner today? And how do we prepare kids for not my future, but theirs? You see, perspective is really a big part of this equation. I have a desk in the office, I have a picture above my desk in Farmingdale Schools, and it's a picture of a bunch of desks. And it's there to remind me every single day why the work that we do in education is so important. You see, this is not my vision of what teaching and learning should be, of course, but it reminds me every day of why we're there and the hard work that we have to do to help change that. See, some of us might think this is where we are today in the state of education, and maybe this is where we have to be. We all have different places where we think that might be. But no matter what we think, the resources that stand in the way are often blamed on people, time, or money. I would beg to differ that it's something much bigger than that. The big wall that blocks most of us as individuals and even organizations from realizing transformational change could be quickly answered in this riddle, to which I just gave you the answer. Wasn't supposed to do that. A black dog is sleeping in the middle of a black road, and there's no streetlights, and there is no moon. A car coming down the road with its lights off steers around the dog. How did the driver know the dog was there? You see, I've shown this to thousands of adults, and I've showed this to hundreds of fifth graders. Who gets it right the most? The fifth graders, the children. You see, as adults, we've built these neural networks, these deeply ingrained assumptions about the way we see the world, and it's hard to break those mental models. You see, I've been thinking a lot about the secret life of change and how we do that. It's quite a mysterious thing. Even more mysterious is long-lasting change within organizations. You see, I think the answer is actually within the ideas of perspective and even momentum. You see, as I had this experience with my daughter, I immediately got on the phone with the high school principal, and I said I would like to spend an entire week as a high school student. I spent a day as a 9th grader, a day as a 10th grader, a day as an 11th grader, and then as a 12th grader, because I wanted to drown myself in perspective. I wanted to see what life was like. I employed a technique known as narrative inquiry. And I found myself sitting in an English classroom learning about Dante's Inferno and an AP physics class studying conservational momentum. Yet my notebook left me there. You see, many have asked me, well, what does this mean? What did your experience tell you? And it's very simple. We've yet to change the relationship with knowledge. And we might have an old view of what intelligence is. You see, I think we've romanticized technology too much. Many have called it the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is right in front of us. It's you. It's the people within our organization. I want to share something with you. I've been thinking about intelligence quite a lot, as a matter of fact, in embarrassing moments since 3rd or 4th grade. These are the results from my Iowa test, I suppose. There's nothing to celebrate here. But it's important to take a step back and think about mindset as individuals and organizations that seek to grow and scale our passions. You see, I've been thinking about intelligence a lot. How do we define it? Do organizations display intelligence? And can we, in fact, accelerate intelligence? Let's take a quick look at the formula for momentum. I'm going to bring you back to physics class. See, the momentum of an object is equal to the mass times the velocity of that object. But if we to try to conceive this within the organization, and we took momentum, and we tried to calculate that, and we looked at mass, but the mass wasn't quite the mass the way we think of an object, but yet it was the carrying capacity of our organization to learn and unlearn, times the velocity or the engagement in learning. You see, we have a crisis in thinking about the way we perceive professional learning takes place. Contrary to popular belief, it's not every third Tuesday of the month or every third Thursday of the month. Teachers are always learning. We got to create the spaces for them to do that. You see, if we can start to do that, I know that we can change our trajectory, not just as individuals, but as entire organizations. I want to share a story with you. My wife, 5 years ago, started writing about a topic called raising natural kids. We had our first son who's 5 years old. And she's passionate about this idea of raising natural kids. And yet she couldn't find people within her network of friends right here that were interested in that as well. So she created a Facebook page, but then attracted over 95,000 fans, which I believe now is actually up over 102,000 fans. You see, this has enabled an incredible community of practice, a place for people to exchange ideas. It's a knowledge network. You see, this changes everything, in my opinion. Whether it's social media or whatever form of technology, it's not about connecting us to just knowledge and information. It's the connection to the people. It's the people that we connect with. And we have to start to rethink social capital and what that means. You see, what value does knowledge even have in the digital age? And when our stocks of knowledge go sour so fast, I share this image because I think we have to start thinking about participation in knowledge flows with individuals, within networks where we can share ideas. Now here's an example. In 2012, I was giving the world thanks for allowing me to participate in their knowledge flows on Facebook after finishing my dissertation. What I had done is I wrote many thanks for helping me learn with you to push me in the process of my dissertation. But when I woke up the next morning, I got a comment back from a gentleman by name Don Tapscott. That still gives me chills. And let me tell you why. Don Tapscott was just ranked the number 4 thinker in the world, and yet him and I exchange in knowledge exchanges from time to time. I'm benefiting off his learning as I do many other people in communities of practice. You see, that also, though, pales in comparison to a personal story. You see, in my school district, we're going through a transformation in the way we learn as an organization. We don't talk about Twitter. We don't talk about social media. We tell awesome, powerful stories of what it means to be a learner today. My son Liam is now 5 years old, and last year we realized he had something called sensory processing disorder. It's a neurological disorder that affects him. It's difficult for him sometimes to regulate his behavior. And oftentimes as parents, we have difficult times, and we need people to rely on to get that help. The answers that I need just in time are not necessarily found in the books I need, but the people I need them from. So I've created this account, started following people. And on one frustrating, quite honestly difficult day, I shared a tweet that said, looking for some help on anger issues. We just had an incident. Immediately after that, I got a tweet back from Marianne Russo, who happens to be an occupational therapist who I've never met. She invites me to a show with the lead neuroscientist from Stanford University to talk about the effect that sensory processing has on the brain. There's no other way I can get that experience. I accessed people like I never could have done before. We have to start telling this story about the ability to change the way that we learn. You see, this is the start of an Ironman triathlon. And many years ago, I had every right to be up at the front of this as a former college swimmer. The truth is the race got gradually depressing as it went on for a big man like me when you get on the bike and then you get in the run. But I was able to hold my own in the swim. And a lot of people would drag right off me, kind of like what you're seeing in this picture. But now I get the opportunity, as do you, to draft off brilliant people all over the world. And that network will change as time goes on. But imagine with me for 1 second, what if we were to take this and put it on top of an entire organization? You see, in organizations, not only can we draft off other people's learning, but within the organization, we know that there's not just one leader. And that leadership should change from time to time, as it does in this peloton. And there's a constant back and forth exchange of resources throughout this race. You see, I do believe this is an age of infinite possibility, but we have to think hard. We have to break out of our comfort zones and start to think about what we're going to do as educators. There was an event that took place in Long Beach, New York, 2011. The days leading up to this surf contest, there was not a wave in sight. Believe it or not, the ocean was 100% flat. It's a common occurrence here on Long Island. But what happened was there was a groundswell. And with a groundswell, there's this deep force or undulating pressure from a distant storm or sometimes an earthquake. You'll start to get a powerful force that comes through. Now, I want to share something with you. About 18 or 19 years, I was an ocean lifeguard. And so I want to share a story of something that I observed over the years. You see, one of the things that happens is when people come to the beach, they ask you, what time is high tide, right? Because you all want to get the best real estate in the house. It's usually right up here, right up at the berm. You want the best view of your kids or of the water. But eventually what happens is that groundswell comes up, that force of pressure comes up. And what you start to do, you start to move your blanket back a little bit. And then you move it back a little bit more and a little bit more. And I've seen people over the years get so creative, it's incredible. They'll ask their child to dig a hole, put a ditch, put a wall up, put a boogie board up, put a surfboard up, as if it's going to stop the ocean. It's quite amusing to watch from the lifeguard chair. What ultimately happens, folks, is that the water comes up, it pushes you back. You're either under the boardwalk or against the dunes with nowhere to go. You see, this is not a tipping point right now for us. This is a key turning point for us in education. I want to share this video with you because I think it captures the essence of what we need to think about as individuals within organizations. This is my son Liam at the age of about 7 months old. And he's about to really step out of his comfort zone like never before. As he attempts to make his way up the one step, I'm going to provide some, just a tiny bit, of extrinsic motivation. But I want you to watch. Pay attention to Liam's facial expressions.
Come on. Come on. Yeah. Yeah, come on. Come on.
Again, I always do this experiment when my wife is not home.
Come on, Daddy. Come on.
So I throw out a remote control. That was a BlackBerry.
Come on.
I often say he would have done a backflip if it was the iPad or the iPhone.
Yeah.
Watch how Liam picks up the phone. You see, we're so crazy about technology, but yet we lose sight that to our kids, to many of you in this room, that is not technology. It's not technology unless you were born before it existed. We need to start to change our narrative. Let's not romanticize this piece of technology. It's access to information, it's access to knowledge, but most importantly, it's access to you. It's access to the people that hold the knowledge. Because knowledge isn't just in us, it's between us, and that's what TED is all about. You see, many think that education is going to be changed by technology, but it's a constant back and forth. It's a constant back and forth. And the truth of the matter is that the best teachers have always been with or without technology, the ones that are the most adaptable. But you see, I'm not sure that adapting is what we need to do and need to do only. You see, sustainability, for the most part, has been about adapting to change. It's kind of a homeostatic paradigm, if you will. You see, our bodies are pretty good at that. When we get hot, we sweat. And when we get cold, we shiver. We have this regulation that goes on in our body where we adapt to the change. But what we're hearing today at TEDxLIU is that it's much more than that. You see, it's more of an ecological situation where we not only have to adapt to change, but as individuals and as entire organizations or institutions, we have a responsibility, a moral imperative to begin to shape the change, to change the conversation. I've been thinking a lot about the legacy that I want to have and that I want our schools to have. And I know right now it has nothing to do with test scores. What I want is that I want to know that we help kids discover their passion, discover a love for learning, but give them the tools to scale their passion. Let's do this. Thank you.
Excellent. Any questions? Any questions for Dr. Brennan? We have one right over here.
Yes, I'm very fond of your emphasis upon it being the network's ability to connect individuals to individuals that is particularly powerful. I like that. But I do have a question about it, because I've seen this happen in other situations where the danger of these modern networks seems to be that there's no value inherent in these networks. All connections are equal. So the connection to a person who is an expert on a given subject has no more value than the connection to a person who is, who read an article in a magazine and thinks they're an expert now. And I've seen this create havoc among groups of people who didn't know any better and couldn't distinguish between which person knew what they were saying, which person didn't. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on how can we leverage this network without running into this problem of uninformed opinion overwhelming informed opinion?
It's a great question. And unfortunately, I think we've done a bad job as schools of talking about and dealing with this idea of really digital literacy or information management and digital citizenship, for that matter, that we've almost, to some extent, without the help of the library media specialists across this country are the ones that are really doing the fascinating work with all this and teaching kids about looking at information as information and studying it and putting it up against other information and research. But one of the suggestions that I have is that being a part of a network, making sure that you're connected to smart people, just like we are today, is going to help you in ways that you need it. Now, I'm typically sending out a question over what we call a PLN, Personal Learning Network, and I'll throw a question up on Twitter or Facebook, but I know the people that I follow on these spaces, there's trust. There's a certain level of trust that exists there. I want to throw one other piece on top of that I believe that as you start to participate in these networks and you follow smart people, the idea of serendipity comes into mind. You see, as myself and even as our organization, we're embracing this idea that we all don't know what we don't know, right? We've all heard that. We don't know what we don't know. But if we add one simple word to that sentence, we don't know what we don't know yet, and possess the organizational mindset to do that, realizing that the key to sustainability as an organization, as individuals, by connecting with like-minded individuals via communities of practice, which are fueled by networks, we do have the capability to, I believe, shape serendipity, shape serendipitous learning, and you'll go on a journey of learning like never before.
Any other questions? Oh, we have one right over here. Take one more question.
Thank you. Well, you talked a lot about the importance of innovation and the ability for students to scale their education and the importance of unlearning. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this recent trend of reversing the classroom, where the students consume the lectures outside of the classroom and do the hard mental work inside the classroom. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's having a positive or net negative effect on education?
The thing you're speaking of, flipping the classroom?
Yep.
Yeah, flipping the classroom's really caught on like wildfire. It's almost a new buzzword, right? It's what we're doing. And I would say that to an extent it's good. But the bottom line is that good teaching isn't just one solution. Good teaching depends on so many other factors. So flipping the classroom might be a good thing to do in certain instances with certain kids, but it's not always the solution. There is no silver bullet here. What we have to do is mix all the best ideas together and do what's best for kids.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's get another round of applause for Dr. Brennan.